Hey everyone, this is Philip Boulle, the game director for Dawn of War 3. I'm here with Geoff Robinson, aka iNcontroL, and we're talking Eldar.
I am super stoked. Just love what I've seen so far of them. You guys, we were kind of talking about the sound element even of them, and just really kind of capturing the elegance of Eldar, kind of the really cool interpretation of like what would happen if in the distant future there were these guys.
Yeah.
What they would look like.
Yeah, well, we definitely wanted to get a really nice feel for the Eldar. This mission in particular, this is the second mission you play as Eldar in the campaign.
This is the second mission?
No, it's the sixth mission overall.
Okay.
But it's
As
the
Eldar,
second one you play as Eldar.
Okay.
So it's sort of the mission where we bring all the Eldarness to life. So it's a mission that's about sneaking around. We have these alarm mechanisms here that you take out guys before they can raise the alarm. So there's a lot of sort of stealth or visibility gameplay, a lot of scouting involved. Really creates that sense of being the Eldar, playing to their strength, sneaking through the Space Marine defenses.
Yeah, I really like that. It the whole Eldar kind of lore is that they are on craft worlds. They don't really have... I mean, they do have gigantic armies that, of course, they can field, but that's like the most desperate of times. Most of the time when Eldar are depicted, it's a lot like this. And I actually really like... I think we're coming up on the Scouts or the Rangers.
Yes,
really
you
like
can
that
see them in
element.
the middle of the screen there. They're a stealth unit. So they can go across the map. There's only a few units that will detect them.
That's what I was going to say. Sometimes they got really close to a lot of people.
Yeah.
So it's only certain things that can see them, I guess.
Exactly.
Okay.
So our detector units are our builders. So for the Space Marines, it's the servitors. So you'll see them patrolling around every once in a while. And there's one in the middle there with the little servo arms. So the Rangers have to avoid them or else they'll be revealed. But otherwise, they're pretty free to move around unless they attack, of course, or use an ability, but that allows them to create sort of visibility.
I'm going to put you in the spot a little bit because I also saw them. I saw even detectable Eldar units go into like high grass. Is there a visibility thing in this game as well?
Yeah, there's a concept we call stealth cover.
Okay.
So on this tile set, it's contextualized as high grass. And it behaves as any unit that goes into it becomes concealed.
Okay.
But
the same thing like a servitor could see you, but maybe...
anybody else if an enemy goes into that tall grass, they'll see you. It also blocks line of sight. You can sort of see that the fog of war extends as you go in. So again, it plays into that visibility gameplay.
I'm going to ask you a little bit of a loaded question.
Sure.
Does it provide other forms of cover as well? Do you get does some shots miss?
This is only stealth cover is only visibility based.
Okay.
We do have heavy cover, which functions a lot like buildings did in Dawn of War 2 or in Company of Heroes. There are these fortified points that you have to take control of, and then they protect you from ranged fire.
So there is a cover system. It's just different, I guess.
Yes, exactly. It's much more binary than we had in Dawn of War 2.
Okay.
And that's just because we're dealing with much larger armies, and we wanted it to be a lot clearer. When you're dealing with 20 squads at once, it's pretty hard to sort of line them up behind walls and trees and so on for the direction of cover.
Yeah, I've been in everything I've seen so far. I've been keeping my eye on kind of the supply there at the bottom left and how big an army can get.
Yeah,
it can get pretty darn massive.
Yeah.
Like I've seen sizable forces, and it hasn't even broached over 100 supply.
Yeah,
you can get quite a bit.
Yeah, you can get quite big.
Which is awesome. I think that's very 40K.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we really wanted to hit that large army fantasy. Now, this as an early mission starts with a smaller force, as you can see. So there's resources will actually, sort of limit how big an army you can generate.
And I like this scene here too. This is there's like a scenario in front of this. There's an alarm. There's patrols. Don't see a lot in the way of detection, but kind of scoping it out and deciding how you're going to approach and attack this. And like you said, with the low resources, I like too that it puts a little bit of the screws to you, because it's not like you're like, well, I've got 200 supply of just a giant army. I'm just gonna. There's no decision here to make. I'm just gonna walk through it.
So this is a different approach. Instead of attacking the guys who raise the alarm, we attack the alarm itself generally. So that knocks them out, and that's really taking advantage of that stealth grass that allowed us to just get a great line of fire.
Yeah, I like these elements too, because one of the, if you want to call it like a problem that RTSs can fall into, especially in a campaign, is like everything is a nail and you are a hammer. So it's like every decision you're like, well, I mean, you could stealth it, or you could just show up with a Wraith Knight, I guess, and then walk through it.
Yeah, exactly. So you have some limits here. The mission definitely escalates, so you are going to get to these larger armies and stronger forces. But in the early points here, you only have one elite. That's Macha, the hero we can see sort of center screen. And she can be quite effective against infantry, but you also have to time her correctly, because she does have her most dangerous attacks have relatively long cooldowns.
Yeah, I can see actually when you select her, it kind of describes her role as well. I think she was called like area control and nuker or something along those lines.
Yeah. If she dedicates all her, so that's her throwing her spear.
Stuns them for a little bit.
Yeah, knocks out those snipers, which is helpful because they have a setup time. And then she may recall her spear, and that will do some additional damage. And then that's her area effect attack.
Oh, okay.
And you can see with the Eldar, they have that pink bar on top of their health bar. And that's their shield. So, we call it battle focus. In context, it's the sort of war trance that Eldar warriors go into, and it protects them. Mechanically, it serves as regenerating health, and as long as they don't dip... I'll let Jonah say his words, but as long as you don't dip into the blue health bar, you don't start losing troopers, so your firepower doesn't go down. So it really encourages a sort of hit-and-run gameplay, because compared to Space Marine units, they have much less actual health, but they do have those shields. So they can go in, take some damage, but then pull back to heal back. The other big mechanic they have is called Fleet of Foot. So at the top of the screen, there's a sort of portal that's hovering, and that's a webway gate, and it generates a big area effect, which makes Eldar units move faster and regenerate their shield faster.
Very cool.
So it's really about staying in those areas. You get a really strong advantage.
I like seeing these Dark Reapers, really iconic units from, obviously the tabletop game.
Absolutely.
And how important, I've heard you're a big lore guy.
Oh, definitely. I've been playing 40K off and on for 30 years now, almost.
Okay. You might have me beat, but not by much.
No,
I know a very long time myself, but I like, so I want to ask you, like, seeing a Dark Reaper kind of in the game, they're more of like an anti-tank thing. How important was it for you to, and I'm not saying they're not here, but to kind of sync up that lore and the tabletop game that we're familiar with to the game?
It's definitely the starting point we take. But we also have to make sure we're fitting all the roles that we need in our particular ecosystem.
Sure.
So the Dark Reapers, for example, fit a more... they're a little better against infantry than they are against tanks. They do what we call true damage, or real damage, so they do damage to any unit regardless of their armor type. So they can do damage to tanks, they'll do damage to infantry. They also actually have an area of effect on their attacks, so that makes them especially effective against infantry. For dedicated anti-tank, we actually have a higher tier unit called the Shadow Spectres. So they're on the mini side. They're a unit that was introduced by Forge World. So they're a little rarer in the tabletop ecosystem, but they provide really dedicated anti-tank.
Yeah, they're really cool. A lot of kind of kiteability. I think we'll see them later.
Yeah,
here.
we will. They're actually hover units. They're infantry that float above the battlefield, so that gives them some really great mobility and also some protection against melee.
And here's those stealth guys going ahead again, just showing off. I love the line of sight in this game as well. If you get to certain vantage points, you can see further ahead and allows you to kind of map for that, which is actually a really big deal, because even in my own playthroughs as the Space Marines, if you didn't see something coming, like for instance one time I didn't see a Wraith Knight that was up ahead, and then I kind of went back, macroed a little bit at home, came back, and it turns out the Wraith Knight has like a black hole ability or some kind of Yeah, it killed the whole army, so it's important to see what's coming.
Yeah, well, especially as the Eldar, who really rely on hit-and-run tactics, knowing what's ahead so that you can direct your force appropriately is really important. Like, you can see these assault marines here now, they're outnumbered, so they're going to get beaten, but they were doing exactly what they needed to do. They were starting to tie up those Dark Reapers and do some serious damage.
And they too have kind of an initiation ability where they jump in and then they stun.
Yes.
And in this playthrough, I was really excited to see there is actually pretty cool micro options. Like, if you move out of the way of that, obviously you don't suffer that.
Yeah.
That sounds kind of, it's like, it's, all right, Geoff, you can move out of the way of damage. It's like, yeah, but not every game has that. It's really nice to see that in this game.
Yeah, exactly. We definitely, especially with triggered abilities, we definitely wanted to give lots of counterplay.
Yeah.
Movement is an important part of counterplay. I'll just call out the unit we just brought out. Now, this is Jain Zar, and she's, in the lore, she's essentially a goddess. She's the founder of the Howling Banshees.
A Phoenix Lord, right?
A Phoenix Lord, and she is extremely badass. She's a good example of... well, you can see she just threw her tri-skill and murdered herself a bunch of Space Marines. So she's very effective against infantry. Compared to some of the sort of late game elites, she's relatively low health, so she can't take a lot of sustained damage, but she has a lot of damage potential and disruption potential and mobility, so we'll see her used to great effect on this playthrough.
So cool seeing her. She's in all kinds of books. She's in, I believe, even the Codex. She's just all over the lore.
Exactly, and she's a class of character that we've never done in Dawn of War before, is those sort of outright mythological characters from Eldar lore, and that's really good to bring her into the game.
That's awesome.
As a lore nerd, I was very happy to get her on the roster.
And I can't. Yeah. Okay. I had the super fanciful mindset of like, maybe there's more in the future than we'll see. It's obviously, if one Phoenix Lord is possible.
Yeah, we'll see.
Exactly. Gets me excited.
Yeah. So now we're sort of building up some resources, putting down some listening posts to protect them.
Stretching forward that fleet of foot.
Yeah, exactly. So because we've teched up a bit, we can now relocate those webway gates. So now I'm thinking I'm going to go attack one of my objectives, which is off to the left here. So I want a field of fleet of foot to help me regenerate.
Okay.
I'm just sort of getting my
taking some time to recharge shields here too, obviously.
Yes, exactly. So I don't have enough power to buy the upgrade that will allow me to reinforce my squads near the webway gate, so I still need to do that back at the production buildings. So again, sending in my rangers to check out the defenses. This is an especially well-defended area.
Yeah, even patrolling here.
Yeah.
But like that, you can see like the shadow beyond that line of sight blocking terrain. So when they go there, you can't see them. When you take a look around the corner, you can.
Yeah, exactly. That's a mechanic we inherited from Company of Heroes 2, and we've made great use of here now. Again, because we're dealing with potentially large armies, we do have more open space than that game. So the visibility, it's more particular situations that come into play and elevation changes, but it creates some really fun gameplay.
I think we're kind of taking a look at, and I also noticed that units build relatively fast. Like they don't take too long, so what's kind of nice is you do stockpile some resources, but it allows you to kind of stick to what you were talking about, the movement of the army and the decisions with the army itself.
Yeah.
Obviously, especially with multiplayer, as we see better players kind of come in, you're going to be getting a cool mix of both, I think, if you can optimize both.
Exactly. We really wanted to set it up so you have, at first when you're playing, there's a fairly straightforward choice of, am I going to put my attention on my elites or am I going to put my attention on my line units? And as players get more used to the game, as they pursue more advanced strategies, then a mix of those is going to evolve. Like, in this playthrough, I'm using a lot of Dark Reapers, so I'm sort of massing firepower, and then using the elites to back those up.
And it seems to be effective. The range of them really good. And as you said, that true damage against, I think this was just Space Marine units.
Yeah.
Just kind of drops them pretty quick.
Yeah, essentially, I mean, this is more advanced stuff, but under the hood, our damage system works that sort of normal damage will do full damage to infantry and then reduce damage to vehicles, and anti-armor damage will sort of do the reverse, whereas true damage does full damage to everyone.
Okay.
So makes them quite effective.
And here we go. We get to see the Phoenix Lord in action.
Yeah.
That ability right there just clears lanes is the idea.
Yeah,
Kind of comes to
so
mind.
that's her tri-skill, the Silent Death. And you actually can use it with some great mobility because it will return to wherever you are. So you can sort of guide it by moving the unit, which is very helpful. You can see Jain Zar is going into cover there, so that's the other thing about our cover system is it protects against ranged fire, but melee units become sort of storming units.
Yeah.
They're the ones who have to go in and take out the cover, or take out the units in the cover.
It's a good thing she did. Those heavy bolters in there were doing a pretty hefty amount of damage, actually. And that is that kind of building cover you were talking about. Like you said, you can't shoot them directly. You have to drop down the shields first and then get at them. Or storm in there, as it was.
Exactly. So it creates a really nice role for dedicated melee units. In this particular build, Jain Zar is my only melee unit right now because I haven't built a bunch of Howling Banshees. So I'm really sort of counting on her as my cover cover counter, as it were, and you can see she's taken a fair amount of damage in that. So I'm going to retreat her back to the base. The base buildings have an aura that heals elites, so she'll take care of that while Macha takes care of a few last units and captures this communications array, which is our current objective.
Yeah, I like it a lot. And I actually like on the minimap too that you can pretty clearly see the objectives. It's, it's nice knowing this is where you have to head towards doing that.
Yeah, exactly.
Here comes the retaliation. I also like that in the game too, there's times where you hear them say like, oh, they've taken this, so now we're going to attack them, and it kind of gives you a heads up.
Yeah, exactly. Like, we really wanted you to get that sense that the Space Marines are actively defending this place. They're going to respond as you act. We really created a situation that played to both strengths. So the Eldar have a chance to use mobility, line of sight, hit and run tactics quite well. And the Space Marines have opportunities to dig in. They're quite strong at sort of sustained fights. And you'll see that'll peak towards the end of this mission. This part of the mission, I would say, plays to the Eldar strengths. Yeah. So, you're able to. You have more mobility than the enemy does. You're able. Their positions are fortified, but not fully fortified.
Not super great.
They're sort of outposts. And then we'll get into the Space Marine strength a little later on.
And I love the animation of this land spear here.
Yeah, here we go.
When it dies hard.
Yes, the death of speeder units is just one of those great pleasures in Dawn of War 3.
Even how they roll up, though, and just the heavy bolter, you can hear it. That too is cool. Yeah. But again, I mean, you can see they're unsupported, they're by themselves, so obviously...
Yeah, exactly. They're right now, they're just there to harass the player.
Look at the range on the Dark Reapers. Yeah. I like the animation on that, too, how they kind of, like, shoot out a little bit out of them and then propel forward.
Exactly.
It's a cool imagination of that.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good example of whenever we take those sort of abilities or even passive fire, and our animators, our effects artists, they're all looking for, okay, how can we make this a little unexpected? Yeah. Just enough that it feels fresh.
And why do they have gray health there? What does that mean? The speeders on the ground.
Oh, the speeders. So that's their wreck. You can actually destroy the wreck.
Okay.
If you choose to.
All right. Not bad.
Yeah.
And one thing that I've got my eye on this entire time, and I'm wondering why it's being held away from me.
Yeah.
Why can I not have a Wraith Lord right now? Well, give me Wraith Lord, please.
So, a Wraith Lord is your third elite here, and he is sort of a late game elite. So you have to build up the elite resource. So
and how do you do that?
It evolves it just builds up over time.
Oh, it's time based.
So
Okay.
if I had chosen not to deploy Jain Zar, which cost 5 elite points,
Okay.
I could have waited a little longer and deployed the Wraith Lord.
Okay.
But then I wouldn't have
Jain Zar,
right?
What's the fun in that?
Yeah. And right now, since I'm dealing with mostly infantry units, Jain Zar is the better choice.
Yeah.
So you can see I'm pulling back, reinforcing my army before I go on to the second objective on the right. I'm going to start building some of those Shadow Spectres I was talking about.
Yep.
Just getting ready for...
Alert command to deal with these trespassers.
Oh, somebody triggered an
spotted.
alarm.
And that's really unfortunate because now the army has to rush over here to deal with this.
Exactly.
Otherwise,
Doesn't look like we're going to make it. No.
we get some reinforcements. So this is an unideal fight because it was not planned.
Yes, exactly. And you can see the Space Marines are bringing in drop pods, bringing in some extra forces. Now Jain Zar is going to use her other ability, which is a jump, so she can soar around the battlefield and does damage where she starts the jump and where she ends it.
I love that scream.
Yeah.
But you're able to kind of save the...
Yeah.
I keep seeing grenades go forward. Obviously, that's from the Guardian unit, right?
It's the Dire Avengers, actually.
Dire
we don't
Avenger.
have Guardians, we have
Okay.
Dire Avengers. And yes, they have a plasma grenade, which does damage and knockback. So it's...
Is that cooldown based out of the squad as well?
Yes,
or? Okay.
yeah. But it's good for disruption in
Yeah.
particular.
It's kind of one of the things I noticed is that utilizing the different abilities of each unit is actually super, super important.
Yeah. It depends on your unit choice, actually. There's things like the Dark Reapers don't have an active ability.
Okay.
So their gameplay is a lot more about positioning, using their extended range, getting sight for them so they can lay down the fire. They have tear down times as well and setup times,
okay.
so you have to be a bit more careful. Whereas others have active abilities. So here you can see we took the point, but then we started building and we left it undefended, and they've come to harass. So Jain Zar is going to come back and
Make him feel bad about it.
make him feel bad about it, but they did get our power generator,
Slowed it down
so
a
we'll
little
have
bit.
to rebuild that.
God, I just want to zoom in and see that's one of the coolest things about Dawn of War is the different death animations and just
Yeah.
the cinematography of the battles is really fun.
Yeah, we're really proud of how spectacular we make battle. But yeah, so back to abilities. The elites, of course, have more abilities typically, but even there's a spectrum. There are units. You'll see the Wraith Lord when he comes out. He has some great abilities, but he's also tanky enough that you can just sort of let him do his thing. Whereas Jain Zar or Macha both need a bit more attention to really reach their full potential.
Which is tough with Jain Zar too. You really you kind of have to babysit her because that low health and her being a melee unit, she'll want to run forward.
Absolutely.
But without good support, she'll go down pretty quick.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which I think's right. I mean, that's a really fun element to the Eldar play. Like they do have these mythical, like godlike characters, but it's always been that their abilities are more towards like the speed ability. Like that's what their survivability is, not necessarily that they weather the storm.
Yeah, exactly. As soon as they get into a sustained fight, they're going to start taking losses.
But in a duel or something like that, they're ridiculous.
Exactly. If they can control the engagement, so they can come in, hit, pull back, hit again. I mean, mechanically, that's even true of their weapons.
Yep.
Unlike the Space Marines that do sustained fire, most Eldar weapons are burst weapons.
Yeah.
So they'll do bunch of damage up front. Here's your Wraith Lord. He's ready to rumble.
I love the animation direction of this too, like the kind of ethereal trailing off on the back of it. Just such a cool effect.
Yeah, absolutely. He's been one of my favorite units since I started getting to know Eldar 20 odd years ago, and I'm just so happy to see how he's come together here.
And there are Wraithguard in this game as well?
Yes, they're both Wraithguard and Wraithblades.
Cool.
So they're the smaller Wraith units. Wraithguard are ranged and Wraithblade are melee units, and they're sort of towards the top of the tech tree.
Yeah.
They're sort of the Eldar version of advanced infantry, heavy infantry. So we have the full range of Wraiths. We have Wraithguard, Wraithblades, Wraith Lords, and Wraith Knights.
Man. Love it.
Here's one of those servitors who's going to ruin his...
And this looks like a bigger fight. You can already see there's a dug-in. I think those are heavy bolts.
Yeah, you can see there's a Dreadnought as well.
Yep.
So Jain Zar is in maybe a little over her head here.
Yeah, her shield's going down really quick, as you see.
Yeah, but the Wraith Lord is going to do his...
And there it is. It's one of the coolest animations in the whole game.
Yeah.
It has to be. If there's anything cooler than that, you guys have done too much. Just like throwing the sword down, dragging it forward, swiping.
Yeah, he's pretty awesome. So yeah, Jain Zar is in a bit of trouble, so she's going to have to pull back. But
it's cool though. It's cool seeing the limitations of her. Like that's what we were talking about.
Yeah.
If she goes too far forward, I mean, she went down pretty quick.
Yeah.
If you would have left it there, she would have died.
Yeah, but you can see.
Then the Wraith Lord is not having any of it.
But because I had to pull Jain Zar back, I couldn't go into that cover, so I had to destroy it with concentrated firepower, which means if I have to repel an attack here, I won't have that cover.
Okay.
So it's a bit of a risk-reward situation.
When it's destroyed, it's gone. It doesn't come back.
Yeah, once it's destroyed, it's gone. You can repair it if it gets destroyed, but if it gets damaged, but once it gets destroyed,
okay,
you're out of luck.
Gonna go back and take that objective here in a second, but we're getting pretty close. As you can see in the top left, it's just counting down. Actually, this is the last one of the objectives that are listed.
Yeah, this is the last of the first part of the mission. There'll then be a second part. We really wanted to give people big, hefty missions. So, this is a 45-minute playthrough or so, and that's fairly typical of our missions. So you're going to get a lot of gameplay.
And there's a little bit of variety in it too, like you said. There's the stealth, and then there's just been some knock 'em down, drag 'em out fights as well.
Absolutely. We showed a late game Space Marine mission at the summer conventions, and that's a much bigger, like, full pop cap armies crashing into each other. Whereas this is built more around, especially this part, is built around visibility.
I think that's what I was able to play at PAX Prime.
Yeah,
it was
absolutely.
so fun. Dreadnoughts are really, really cool.
Yep. They're less cool when they're being used against you. You'll see that soon enough. So the Eldar can also relocate their base buildings. So here we're going to move our base buildings into a forward staging area so that we can attack this Space Marine base that's to the north.
That is pretty crazy. That's pretty ambitious, by the way.
Yeah.
Multiplayer, I'm going to be really interested to see how that gets balanced out.
There's definitely times when an Eldar player will sneak something into your base.
Yeah, well, there's their whole base. Oh, okay.
Now, you remember how I was saying earlier that the early part of the mission really played to the Eldar's strengths?
Yeah.
Well, the second part plays to the Space Marine strengths. Okay. They're well entrenched in a fortified base to the north here, and we've got to get to them, take out their base buildings, take out their HQ, and it's going to be a challenge.
This is kind of a little bit mundane almost, but in base building, is there limitations to where the buildings could go? I mean,
not at all. They
obviously it's better to centralize so you can defend it, but
yeah.
otherwise
Well,
no.
it's forward base building is an important part of our game actually, because it gives you reinforcement points, healing points for your elites, but there's always risk involved because you're more exposed to enemy fire, of course. So yeah, there's no sort of control zone that you need to respect. You can build anywhere there's free space. It's up to you to weigh the pros and cons of a particular area. And that's in a multiplayer context, especially, that creates some really nice emergent gameplay where new strats come up as people discover places they can put bases or particular combinations. Something an advanced Eldar mechanic that we don't really get into in this playthrough is you can also create portals between buildings.
Oh.
So you can warp your army from one building to another.
Okay.
So that whole, relocate a building into the back of the enemy's base.
And then there's an army streaming through. Now, it's opening those gates is a sort of top tier ability that unlocks. So by that time, it's a late game thing. So your enemy has tools to deal with it. Yeah.
By the end, but it really adds to that sort of Eldar hit and run, appear out of a flank you weren't expecting.
That'll be cool. A lot of fighting all over.
Yeah, exactly.
I liked even the Space Marines had drop pods. You could drop in defensive structures. You could just drop in straight up a dreadnought or Space Marines.
Exactly.
You can have that on cooldown, so you have it ready to go in case of a strategy like that.
Yeah, exactly. And conversely, the Eldar have to be ready for that other shoe to drop.
Yeah.
This is a problem when you're dealing with Space Marines, is I scout out an area, 3 drop pods coming in, and now I've got dreadnoughts or tanks or things right on my doorstep.
Kind of scouting around here. This is the fortress.
Yeah.
Supposedly Angelus is in here.
Indeed.
Trying to track him down. You can see the servitor wobbling around too. I love that animation even.
Oh, I think it you can just see it at the top of the screen there. That servitor revealed those scouts up there, and they are just getting hammered.
What is that hitting them right now?
That is fire from a whirlwind tank.
Holy cow.
An artillery tank. We'll see it a few more times here.
I love that right there.
Yeah. That is among the best things in the game.
Yes.
It just feels so good when you pull it off.
Feels like it's very anime. I mean, we're talking about even the sound direction of the game beforehand.
Absolutely.
Samurai-esque.
Yeah, we really wanted to sort of blend the sort of space elf side with a sort of samurai sensibilities.
Yeah.
Just that slightly more stoic warrior type of vibe. And it really came together, especially with the Wraith units. Because they're bigger, you can really sell large animations.
That's what I loved about even the lore of Eldar is, one of the kind of funny themes about the game is that there's no real good guy except for maybe the Tau, I guess. But Eldar are so good they're bad. They believe that they know better than everyone else.
Yeah,
they believe
exactly.
that they're the highbrow race that has the best intentions, and in order to achieve those intentions, they have to kill everybody else.
Yeah, exactly.
The
so
Monkai.
You can see here that, we went in thinking we could take out these Space Marines with a show of force, and they have already taken out our Wraith Lord. They took down Jain Zar. Our army is shrinking because we're in a sustained fight. And
now with no Jain Zar, you can't run into there. So
yeah, exactly. Without Jain Zar, so I'm throwing grenades, but that doesn't have an effect there. There's these whirlwind batteries coming in. You saw that warning, so I was able to pull out. But, I'm down to a fairly small force. Now, fortunately, my anti-tank units, the Shadow Spectres, I've been able to keep most of them alive. They're a little more expensive, so it's good to keep them alive.
Yeah.
But you'll remember earlier I had a whole force of Dark Reapers. I am down to 1 Dark Reaper. Not even one squad, just one dude.
Which you can reinforce, so he can come back.
Absolutely, he can come back, and there is a benefit to reinforcing over building a squad. You do get a discount for that. So it is more efficient. But I really took some serious losses here. So here comes some drop pods.
One goes into the river.
Yes,
Come on.
One of them went into this an in development build. It looks like maybe there was 1 square of passable space in there. But you know,
They're still shooting though.
they're still shooting. They're doing okay. But
Making the best of a bad situation.
yeah. Okay, so
I like too. One of the things I had to wrap my head around when I played through it at PAX was the drop pods are weapons. Drop them on stuff.
Yes, absolutely.
That's amazing. Of course they are.
Yeah, it's a total risk-reward thing, right? Because you drop them on guys, they do knockback, they do damage, they're really, you know, they can be really effective, but the guys you deliver are then in the middle of the enemy. That can be a really good thing if it's the right unit, or it can be a terrible thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's definitely a risk-reward there.
All right, and now we see our first tank too. By the way.
So this is the Falcon Grav tank. And let's see, we're going to
really
try
mobile.
Poke here. Yeah, he can go over any obstacles. He's an outright flyer. There's that whirlwind I was talking about. So we're going to try and take him out. But
the fight just kind of, and there's that vision thing we were talking about too, where like all of a sudden there was more than we anticipated. Look at the tank go down almost immediately.
Yeah, he's pulling out. He got hit by some anti-air units. The late tier anti-tank units, so Devastators with las cannons or these Shadow Specters, also do bonus damage against flyers.
Okay.
So that's a real problem for Eldar because all their tanks are flyers. So they have to pay extra attention. But I was able to get out. His shield's already healed up, and I moved in a Bone Singer to heal him up. So that's actually a pretty good use of hit and run.
And again, Jain Zar just a little bit unintended there, and just takes such a huge amount of damage.
And here comes the Wraith Lord. He's going to use this. Those las cannons are the most dangerous thing for him because he has tank armor or heavy armor.
But then when he gets up in their face, they're just gone.
Exactly.
Love the voice on him too.
Yeah. That charge he does with the sweep at the end, you can actually trigger the sweep early.
Oh, you can.
So you can sort of time it, and when you get to where you want to be, you just hit the I think it's Q again, and he'll.
Oh, that's
sweep.
awesome.
So there again, there's that sort of micro timing player agency side.
Is that true with Jain Zar's ability to her
no, Jain Zar doesn't have a secondary trigger, but she has some interactions.
Okay.
So her jump, she will run forward and then jump off the first enemy she runs into.
Okay.
Or she will also jump off her tri-skill. So she can throw the tri-skill, have it come back, then jump off it, land in the enemy. She can create a lot of havoc that way.
Well, that's awesome. It's not just a bland, like, this is just going to do that.
No, exactly. All our elites have interesting interactions that way. We really wanted to create a system where we had simple ways to use them and then more advanced techniques. And they also interact with each other. So, Macha can freeze people in stasis, and then other units can do things to units that are in stasis, and so on. So there's a lot of interesting interactions that I think will, keep the game fresh and interesting for people for a long time.
I was just marveling at the damage. Again, you can see the different elites and their different roles. The Wraith Lord can take a lot of damage. He didn't wander too far forward. There seems to be a lot of guys up there, but he was like, okay, got to pull him back.
Yeah.
But you can just see it, like you said, this is not the favorable situation for the Eldar. Every time they go forward, they're like, okay, let's go rebuild.
So they got to pick forward. They've got to make sure they have those webway gates there, so they get that fleet of foot, and it also regenerates their shields and even their abilities a little faster.
And any Space Marines bleed 4. That is a mistake.
Yeah, exactly. So at this point, you're sort of in a stalemate, right? Like the Space Marines seem to be holding the line. We haven't been able. I think we took out one of their whirlwinds, but their base buildings are still there, so they're still getting reinforcements. Like you say, if they poke out, we're able to take them down. Mm-hmm. So you have to build up a slightly different force. Now we got 2 tanks.
What's the role of the tank, do you think? I mean, does it have that AP shell? It's just good against other
yeah,
armor.
so the Falcon is... Oh, now see the Space Marines are poking at us with some drop pods.
They had to move out of the way of that one.
Yeah. Now, unfortunately...
Hot landing zone, I would say.
Yes. But it keeps us on our toes, which is good. If we hadn't been paying attention or had been in a push flanking, they could have done a fair amount of damage.
Well, to be fair, every Warhammer book I ever read, those 10 Space Marines would have killed this and probably 100,000 more Eldar. So they had the right idea, just the wrong depiction of the
Well,
universe.
maybe, except if you read Eldar fiction, then...
Fair point. Then they're dancing around them and
Yes.
lecturing them on their evil ways, too.
Exactly. One Eldar is worth 1,000 Monkai.
That's true. I'm going to poke forward again with the elites.
Yeah.
That ability, that anti-troop, and I like, too, it tracks, right? So if you move
Yeah.
to the right, you can drag it on a different path.
Yeah, so there's a whole bunch of, like, gameplay that you can do there. Now we're trying to take out that reinforcement structure.
There's the last cannon and heavy bolters over there.
Yeah, exactly. The heavy bolter is not much of a problem for the Wraith Lord, other than the fact that the heavy bolter does a slow, so it keeps him in range for the las cannons longer than he might
Well,
want
that's
to
really
be.
cool. It's got stopping power to it.
Yeah, exactly.
This is starting to finally tip in your favor.
Yeah, Jain Zar's moving into the cover.
Good Spectre support, but they just don't have anything for the Wraith Lord just yet at all.
Yeah. Oh.
Well, okay.
Speak of the devil.
There's that vision.
Here comes the Dreadnought. But now we have gotten past what was really the hardest nugget for us, was that position of cover and the las cannons there.
And it, too, can weather a storm, if you see, but, I mean, it's just by itself taking all that Spectre damage and
Yeah, exactly.
even Reapers.
Okay. So they're flanking, they're doing their job, sort of disrupting our infantry. But those Spectres are the real danger for the Space Marines now.
Here come the reserves. Oh,
Yeah. So the Spectres have some, because they're floating units, they can't be tied up in melee.
yeah.
So melee units are less effective against them, but not completely ineffective. You saw some disruption there. But just their concentrated firepower.
Fight me, Eldar.
Okay, so now
Where is Angelos?
here comes
Gabriel need not bother
Jonah
with
Orion.
here comes Jonah Orion, the chief librarian for the Blood Ravens, and he's gonna lay some personal smack down. So he's a Space Marine elite. As a Space Marine player, he's one of the elites who get to play. But as an Eldar, you will have to deal with him. And you can see he's...
Holy cow.
Yep.
And he doesn't even have that much support, but they are laying waste.
Yeah. Well, he's got...
Pretty good support.
Yeah, he's got a tank, and then he's going to start using his abilities here.
This is so cool.
Yeah, locking in a bunch of guys behind his stone wall here, and then blinding them.
That's pretty amazing anti-Eldar specifically, because they want to get away from a melee unit,
Yeah,
but he says,
exactly.
no, you can't.
Exactly.
And the Wraith Lord's just on the outside, like, I'll come over there in a second.
Yeah, exactly. The Wraith Lord actually can't do anything to get in there. Jump units can do something. Here comes Jain Zar, and she's going to start doing a bit of... So there's her jump, doing a bunch of damage there.
Jonah don't give a damn, though.
Yeah,
He doesn't care.
he's pretty healthy.
I mean, obviously you've stacked up resources, you can rebuild what you did.
Yeah,
get.
absolutely. But, I've spent my focus here on my elites, so at this point they're really unsupported because the Space Marines are doing so. We're sort of trying to do a duel of elites. So here you'll see me do an early trigger, like I was saying, knock him out, sort of disrupt him. Jain Zar needs to get out of there while she's got a sliver.
It's a little bit of strategy to the idea of almost just letting her drop there too, right? Or can you replenish that health on the inside of the shield?
Once she gets close to a base building, she will regenerate. So if you look on the left, you can see her portrait. You can see the shield is just like visibly growing.
Okay.
That Wraith Lord. Okay, so let's bring in Macha, see what we can do here.
And you can see here too, again, the tank's not facing anti-tank like you said the last cannons, so they're doing very well.
Yep.
Whereas when they were in the less favorable matchup, they died pretty immediately.
Yeah.
They're good at shooting Jonah.
There. She's getting some damage in.
Tell me where Angelos is, and perhaps I'll spare you.
Leave him. I'm your opponent.
What is that
Macha.
ability he's doing? He just hit that tank with something and it's almost dead.
Yeah, so that's his linear attack.
Okay.
But now we've got him down. Jonah's making way for Gabriel.
And you're going to leave us with that.
And I'm going to leave you with
I'm
that.
coming out. You guys are like, that's it? All right. The tease is real.
Yeah, well, thanks so much, Geoff, for sitting down with us and playing some Eldar.
Pleasure's all mine. This is awesome.